Hello everyone and welcome to another devlog video for HomeGrown, the casual farming game I've been working on for almost 4 years now. It's coming up to 4 years, which is crazy. It's the 1st of December today. I just finished off the machines update that I've been working on for a month. I just put the devlog video out for that yesterday. And like I said in the video, that was really the last big new feature that I want to get into the game before release. So now my focus is really going to turn to getting this game finished, polished up, ready for release. So I don't really have one specific feature that I'm going to be showing in this video. I'm just going to film over the next few weeks, show you anything interesting that comes up, and just, show you what I'm working on. Been a bit of a slow morning today. I was just first replying to comments from yesterday's devlog video, and then I started tidying up my Trello a bit, preparing it for the next update, which is going to be related to the machines. I want to improve the way that you upgrade objects in your world, because currently, if I wanted to upgrade a juice tank, for example, I'd have to first manually remove the old one, then buy the new one, place the new one, and then I'd still have that old one left over, which I can sell in town, but still. It's a bit of a process, and I want to make it easier and make it possible to directly upgrade objects that you've already placed in your farm. So I'll be planning that out this afternoon after lunch. I've spent all afternoon today trying to plan out this new update, which turns out is going to be quite a tricky little update to implement, because I'm going to need to change some stuff to do with the fundamental code of entities and items, which is never fun. And one big decision that I've been struggling with, and I still haven't really decided yet, and that is whether the different tiered versions of an object should be separate entities in the game. So for example, if I upgrade this liquid tank here, should it behind the scenes remove this entity and replace it with a higher tiered version which is a separate entity, or should it just be this entity stays here and has the ability to change to a higher tier? I kind of like the second one. It feels a bit cleaner because I don't have to copy the contents across to a separate entity and copy the connection it has across, but it also would require quite a lot of work and changing the way that items and entities work. But maybe that's for the better. I don't know. Anyway, I'll work more on it tomorrow. So I've been testing out this idea of having a single entity that can change its tier, which, as I said, is quite different from what I do at the moment, because like for the beehives, I've got 4 different tiers of beehives in the game, and each one of these is a completely its own entity. They've got their own entity files. They're just essentially completely separate objects. And what I'm trying to do now is to condense all of those tiers into a single entity that can change its tier. So this test entity here now has a tier value which I can manually increase. The model can change depending on what tier it is, so the different tiers look different, and any stats can also recalculate based on the tier. So essentially this is doing what I want. I've got an object that's already in my farm and I can now upgrade it and upgrade its stats. But this is a very simple example here, and I've still got a lot of work to do before this works with any actual objects in the game, but it's a promising start. So I've got the first working example of this in the game now, using the power generator from the last update, just because it's the simplest tiered entity that I have in the game at the moment. So this is a tier 1 power generator with a capacity of 50, and I can now upgrade it to a tier 2. There's no UI for upgrading it yet. That's what I'm going to do next. So for now I'll just manually cause it to upgrade, and this is now a tier 2 version. So you can see the models updated, and there's been an increase in capacity as well, so I can fit more logs in here. And I could actually keep upgrading it. I don't have any more models, but it will keep upgrading the capacity. And just to show you in the code, this is where it happens. So whenever the tier changes, the capacity of the item container gets recalculated the tier upgrader here calculates the new capacity based on the new tier of the object. Just wanted to do a quick bit of UI work next. So I'm now displaying the tier number in the top left. I thought it would be nice for it to be more of a fundamental part of the UI because so many entities are going to have a tier associated with them. And then I also added an upgrade button. I'm not really particularly happy with where it is, and I don't really know what it should look like either, but it does work. So if I click this, it will upgrade it to a tier 2 power generator. But yeah, maybe I can find a better place to put this. I was thinking potentially I could have like a tab in this UI that you click and that takes you to the upgrade options, but I don't know. Let me know if you have any ideas where this should go. First up this morning, I have a meeting, which is a pretty rare occurrence for me. I don't have many meetings, but recently one of the Patreon supporters, a guy called Dan, offered to help me create the Mac build for HomeGrown, which is something I really struggled with Equilinox, especially as I don't have a Mac computer myself. I had to borrow one, and then it took me ages to kind of work out how to convert my game into a Mac file. It was a horrible procedure. So yeah, Dan offered to set up a system that's going to essentially automate that and make it really easy for me to export the Mac build of the game, and I think he's finished doing that, so he's just going to show me how that all works. Just finished talking with Dan, and he has set up a really easy way for me to create the Mac build using GitHub Actions, which I've never used before, but it's really easy to use, or he's made it really easy for me to use. All I have to do is select this Mac option here, and then I can also select this notarize option, which I didn't really know about before. Basically, from what I understand, Apple needs to kind of verify app files that you create, otherwise you'll get a warning when you try to run them. So if I were to now run this, it would create the Mac build and send it off automatically to Apple to be verified, and then when it's ready, I can just download it from here. So really easy. Massive thank you to Dan for doing that for me. And Dan's actually setting up a company at the moment called Indie Orchards, which is specifically for helping people with other operating systems. So if you're in a similar situation to me, you're working on a game and you maybe need help with the Mac or the Linux version, then do get in contact with Dan. I can highly recommend him. I'm not sponsored, but he did fantastic work for me. He was really helpful the whole way through. So yeah, thank you again, Dan, and I'll put a link to his website in the description. So next up, I'm going to try and tackle the most complicated part of this update, which I think is going to be the render component of entities, which determines what model they have. And unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as just having a different model per tier, because some entities already have quite complex model systems in the game. For example, a beehive already has multiple model stages to show how much honey is in there, and it switches between these models. Other entities are separated into multiple parts so that individual parts can be scaled or moved independently. For example, I think the most complex entity in the game at the moment is the auto harvester, which has multiple moving parts. It also changes its model depending on whether it has a neighboring machine, so it kind of connects to them. It also has an extra bit that appears if there's an item container behind it. So it's already made up of a lot of parts, a lot of different models that are switching in and out. And that's before I've added multiple tiers. So if I now want this entity to have multiple tiers, it's going to complicate this whole render component quite significantly. So I'm going to have to plan this out quite carefully. So it looks like I'm going to be pretty much redoing the entire render component, which is quite a big deal because it's a fairly fundamental part of the entity system, but it seems to be necessary. So I've started off by looking at how the information for the render component is provided in the entity files, and I've been changing the format a bit to now allow for it to be broken up into multiple tiers, although only if necessary. So for simple entities that just have no tiers and a single part, the render component can still be very simple, so I'm not overcomplicating it for all of the entities in the game. So what I've been doing today is I've just been writing all of the new loading code for loading up this new format for the render components. And I've almost got that done. Haven't got anything to show you in the game yet, and I'm actually just about to go off to Berlin today. We're going to visit some friends for the weekend, so I'll continue on with this in a couple of days' time. Well, I've been working on these tiered entities for over a week now, and I've decided to have a bit of a change of plan, because the more I worked on it, the more I realized it was going to be such a massive job, and I was going to have to rewrite not only the entity system, but also then the related items would need to change to allow for multiple tiers per item, which would need the way that the shops work to be reprogrammed. I'd also have to change how the icons work with items, because I'd have to allow for multiple icons per item, one per tier. All in all, I realized I was going to have to rewrite a lot of the fundamental code in the game, and that just seemed like too much to do for what's essentially quite a small feature that I'm trying to implement here. So I've gone back to the drawing board, and I'm going to try implementing the other method that I initially considered, which is that when you upgrade an entity, it now gets switched out for a completely different entity, which is the higher tier version. So the way that this method works is that the different tiers of entities are again separate entities. So for the beehives here, you can see each tier of beehive now has a separate entity file. They're completely separate entities, and each one has this tier upgrade component which links to the entity that it should switch to when it's upgraded. And then in the code, here's the method for upgrading an entity that simply removes the current entity and replaces it with an instance of that higher tiered entity. So finally, I've got this working a bit in my game. I can now upgrade most of the objects in the world. And one thing that made this method a little bit more tricky is that normally if I manually remove this juice tank and replace it with a higher tier version, obviously it loses any settings that that previous entity had, any contents that it had. So one of the things I had to do when implementing this version is that when switching to the higher tier entity, it needs to, behind the scenes, copy across any settings from the previous entity, so that things like the juice contents or the item contents, or for the beehives, the honey contents, get copied across to the new entity so that you don't lose anything. I haven't quite got it working with the machines themselves yet, though. The connections to their attachments are kind of hard to do this copying across thing, so I still need to work on that, but I'm going to have to do that in like a couple of weeks' time, because it's going to be Christmas soon, and we're going off to my partner's family for the Christmas holidays. So I'm in Wolfsburg now for Christmas, but don't worry, I've got my laptop with me so I can do some developing while I'm here. And I thought over the Christmas break I'd treat myself to an easier update to work on, because the tier upgrading stuff has been a little bit tough and boring. So I thought I'd do some work on my icon creation program, which I've shown you before. Essentially what this does is it takes a 3D model that I've made in Blender, like this one for a seed packet, and it renders it and turns it into a nice icon that I can use in the game for the items. For the seed packets though, I've always had to do an extra manual step of putting an image of the vegetable onto the seed packet, so I've been trying to automate that process, and I've done that by simply adding support for texturing into the rendering process, so I can now texture the seed packet with the image of the vegetable, and then that will also get rendered to the icon, and you can see I've got that working here. It's coming to the end of the Christmas week now, but I've managed to get quite a lot of programming done in between all the Christmassy activities, and in the last few days I've really been focusing on trying to streamline the process of creating the more common icon types, like the medals, the juice bottles, and the seed packets. So let me just give you some context about how my icon creation program works. So every icon has a configs file, and this tells the program how it should render the icon. So it links to any models it should use, tells it what textures to use, what rotation to use, any colors, everything it needs to know to create the icon. And I've tried to make this really simple for things like the juice bottles. So I've created this juice preset, and then all I need to do is to specify what image should go on the label, what color the bottle should be, and what color the cap should be. And that's it. And with that information, it can now create a whole juice bottle icon, which is so much faster than it was before. Previously, I had to actually edit the bottle model in Blender to change the colors. Then I would create the icon with an empty label, and then I'd still have to manually edit on the fruit image. So it's so much more automated now. So I'm pretty much done with all of my changes to the icon creation program, just been adding a few more features to it. So firstly, the little vegetable images, they now have their border added automatically by the program so that I don't have to do it manually. So like this little border around the turnip icon here, that gets added in the code, which makes it faster for me and allows me to very easily try out different sizes and colors for the border without having to manually redo all of the icons. Secondly, I added this refresh button, so I can now make changes and then reload the icons without having to restart the program. So for example, if I just change the scale of the turnip icon on here and refresh that, you can see that that change is applied without me having to restart. And finally, I made error feedbacking a little bit better, so icons that failed to load are now still shown, and then you can mouse over them and it will tell you what went wrong. Also, I just wanted to mention that this program doesn't just help speed up the initial creation of these icons, but it also makes it really easy for me to make changes to them. So for example, if I suddenly came up with a better design for the medal icons, all I'd have to do would be to edit the medal model here. So I'll just do something crazy like this for now, and then I'll go ahead and export this. And now if I refresh the program here, you can see that that change has instantly been applied to all of the medal icons because they're all referencing that same model. And this program is also connected with the game files, so if I now export them, that will update the medal icons in the game as well. So this just makes it really quick and easy for me to try out different designs and instantly see them in the game. It is the 2nd of January 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm back in a rather snowy Hamburg now and ready to get back into programming the tier upgrade stuff. I really like the New Year feeling. I always get a bit of extra motivation around this time of year. I think it's just the clean slate feeling. I really like it. I like setting goals for myself. Obviously, the big goal this year is just to finish this game. I really want to release it before the end of this year, or at the very least release a demo, maybe take part in Steam Next Fest. So everything I'm going to be working on in the game from now on is going to be aiming towards finishing it up, finalizing the features, getting this game released. So there aren't going to be really any more big features. I just want to finish and polish up the features that I've got in the game. But yeah, first off, I need to finish off the tier upgrade stuff. I really want to get that done in the next few days because it's been dragging on a bit. So I'm going to get into that now. It is another week later and I finally got everything working fine now. You can upgrade everything, all the machines as well. It all works. It all feels pretty good. I had another go at the upgrade button as well. I struggled so much coming up with a design for an upgrade button. You'd think it would be simple, but I tried so many different designs. I never was particularly happy with any of them. This is what I've gone for at the moment. I thought it would be nice to have a picture of what you're upgrading to on there, and I made it a bit clearer that this is an upgrade button. But yeah, if you have any suggestions of what this upgrade button should look like, do let me know, please. So that is it for this rather long and rambly devlog video. Sorry it was a bit all over the place this time. Obviously the Christmas break got in the way, and the fact that I kind of redid half of that first update. It was all a bit messy. But anyway, I'm very happy with how it ended up. The icon creator is going to make things a lot faster, and I really like the new upgrading system as well. It feels a lot more intuitive and it's way quicker to use for sure. Just a shame that I spent so long on the wrong method at the start. Before I finish, I want to say a massive thank you to the top Patreon supporters from last month, who were Benji Wackburn, Jonas Bardstubner, Dan Andrus, Marcus Rechel, Viechu, Daryl Zuniga, Kevin Shaw, Peter Westhazen, Ingo Moore, Helson Taveras, Andrew Romans, Marais, Shadeless Fox, Kimo Tamio, Ross from 2 Minute Tabletop, Nikat Asgazada, Zanil Ambakar, Atomic Code, Walden Yan, Chris Naismith, Alan Lance, Wonoff, Dieter Reinert, Harry Chung, Christoph Harpo, Matthias Barder, Hagen Vingard, Miggy Doze, Marek Mikolajczyk, Timothy Gibbons, and Neil Blakey Milner. So a massive thank you to you guys, and of course to everyone else supporting me over on Patreon and making this whole project possible. That's it for this week. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.